Coming to you live from our studios in Point Noir, the Republic of Congo. This is the Morning Call. I am Jerry Fisayo Bambi. Now, the Covid-19 pandemic and related measures have brought the world's economy to a shuddering halt. A UN report released last week projects the global economy to contract by 3.2% this year. World trade is forecast to shrink by nearly 15% amid sharply reduced global demand and disruptions in global supply chains. The report, known as the World Economic Situation and Prospects WESP mid-2020, also adds growth in developed economies will plunge to 5.0% this year before picking up next year. Now, most of those developing countries are in Africa, and their economies are already facing a hard and harsh impact from the coronavirus. So far, Africa accounts for just a fraction of total cases of the disease, which has infected nearly 5 million people worldwide. But then it might just be the hardest hit economically. Many countries on the continent have what is called monoproduct-based economies. The oil and gas industry, for instance, contributes about 65% of Nigeria's government revenues and 88% of the country's foreign exchange earnings. What this means is that happenings in the industry tend to have an impact on almost other sectors of the economy. Today, the global price of oil hovers around $30 per barrel, a severe low, and that means government revenues decline and many would be affected. So, how can economies that face such pressures as this deal with the impact? For more on this, we're being joined by Nigerian banker and economist Alex Oti. Alex, a warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us on the program. First off, how serious is this for the economy of African countries, particularly those dependent on a monoproduct like petroleum, Alex?
All right, thank you very much. I think the pandemic has literally messed up the African economy. Most of the economies are, like you said, monoproduct economies. And some of them, majority of them are commodity exporting economies. So with the disruption in global supply chain, with the disruption in globalization, you'll find that import-dependent economies like Nigeria and a lot of other African countries are suffering. But I don't even think that is a major issue for now, because the African countries have now concentrated on what is important. And what is important would include food, healthcare delivery. It will also include clothing and very basic needs of man. So it has shown clearly that man doesn't need as much as he would want to have.
Let us take the case of Nigeria, for example. The IMF projects the Nigerian economy to slide by 3.4% in 2020. And Africa's largest economy could face a recession lasting until 2021. How can Nigeria, Africa's largest exporter of oil, handle this? Can it handle this?
Well, I believe Nigeria can handle it. All it takes is for us to hit the reset button and begin to do things differently. The first thing that we need to do is to pay attention to food security. And Nigeria is blessed with enough resources. Even though they are material, all we require is to pay attention and reduce the dependence on imports. So food security is key. The next one is healthcare. There was what was called the Abuja Declaration in 2001, where African countries decided that 15% of their budget must go into healthcare delivery. As we speak, I believe it's only Rwanda and South Africa that has complied. Nigeria still provides for maybe about 4 to 5% of its budget on healthcare delivery. So, and I think this is the time for countries to begin to pay attention to what is important. And the good news is that in these last 4 months or so, Nigeria has responded very strongly to the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of isolation centers have been built in a couple of days or weeks. Ventilators have come in. And I believe that all what we need to do is to empower our healthcare professionals in such a way that they can begin to look inwards for treatment of common diseases, including the pandemic.
Alex, what should be the plan of the Nigerian economic team now for the post-COVID-19 pandemic? What should be the plan?
My suggestion has always been that we can do with smaller governments, we can do with fewer states, we can do with fewer state governors, we can do with fewer ministers. Today we have 43 ministers, meaning 43 ministries or thereabout. We can do with half of that, or even less than that. We can do, so by the time you cut and tweak all this, then we don't have a choice anyway, because oil is going to disappear anytime, any day, whether we like it or not. And so what we have seen now is not going to change anytime soon. So we better begin to cut according to our cloth, not our size.
And talking about cutting clothes according to clothes and not size, you talked about looking inwards. Nigeria has a soaring debt profile. It recently just took new loans from the IMF, $3.4 billion. There are, in fact, concerns on how well these loans would be spent. What is your take on this? What do you make of this?
The major problem is because 90% of our foreign exchange earnings come from oil and gas, particularly crude oil. And I believe that if we do not get into structural reforms that will make us less dependent on oil, we will keep borrowing. But there is a limit to how much you can borrow. So the pandemic, again, is an opportunity for us to hit that reset button and ask ourselves salient questions. Some of these loans, like I said earlier, were used to pay salaries, to fund politicians and public office holders, a situation where for every 100 naira, 70 naira goes into payment of salaries. It's not healthy for any country. And that is why we have the level of infrastructural decay that we have today. And if we do not invest in infrastructure, I don't know any country that has developed without massive investment in infrastructure. Now, if you spend virtually all your money paying salaries, you have little or nothing to invest in infrastructure. So I believe that the call for us to take another look at the structure, both the economic and political structure of the country, I believe the time is now. And this opportunity is a golden one that we cannot take for granted.
Indeed, Alex. And I'd love to thank you for sharing your insights with us this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.